I'm Pastor Kelly, and this is our Bible study based on Brian McLaren's book, We Make the Road by Walking. It's been a while since we posted an update. Today, we're following up with Jesus as a little boy. So, if you haven't already, read chapter 18 in this book, and Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. And then also read chapter 19 in this book, and Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52. All right, those two chapters of the Bible tell us what Jesus was like as a little boy. We actually don't know a whole lot about Jesus as a kid. We know about Jesus as an adult, and we know about Jesus being born, but we have very little information when he's a kid. Chapter 18, talks about the Magi coming to visit Jesus. And we usually talk about that at Christmas, but it probably wasn't. You see, these folks came from far away when Jesus was a toddler, probably under 2, and then his family escaped to Egypt. Here's one of the things that most people don't realize. This story about Epiphany, it's an immigrant story. We don't even know what the word Magi means. It's not a Hebrew word. It's not a Greek word. It must have been some sort of word used for people from far away. It always gets translated as wise men, but we don't know if they were men or women. And we don't know how many there were or where they came from. Most likely, they were some sort of astrologers, professors, or advisors to a king somewhere in Persia, which is now Iran or Iraq. But we're not positive. And when they came to this country and to Palestine, they went straight to Herod because he's the king. They thought he would know where the new king was born. And they didn't. He didn't. So he gets really mad at these Magi for showing up without permission and looking for a king who isn't a king. And so the big answer is that the angels tell Mary and Joseph to take God, the baby God, stuff him into a basket, sneak him across the border in the middle of the night into Egypt. And we don't know how long they hung out there as refugees in a foreign country. But at some point, they must have returned. Because then in Luke chapter 2, we hear about Jesus being 12 and living with his parents, Mary and Joseph, in Nazareth. So Brian always has some interesting ways of looking at the Bible passages. And so one of the things that he marks in chapter 18 is that the kingdom of God that Jesus constantly proclaims was characterized by an abundant, gracious, extravagant economy of grace, of generosity, and of gift-giving. God is like a parent, Jesus would teach, who loves to shower us with gifts. So we're going to ask you to share about a meaningful encounter you've had with someone of another faith, what that person taught you about your own faith, and how those gifts helped. But then in chapter 19, all of a sudden Jesus is 12, and his parents take the 3, 4, 5-day journey walk with all their family and friends to Jerusalem for the Passover. And at 12, Jesus would have almost been a grown-up. So think bar mitzvah age. If he was a kid, he would have walked with his mom and all the other kids back home. But if he was a man, he would have walked home with his dad. Chances are that when they left Jerusalem on their way back, neither Mary nor Joseph checked in with each other to figure out who had Jesus. And it wasn't until they got ready to camp out for the night that they both realized the other person didn't have Jesus. We've all had that time where you kind of lost track of a loved one in your family. But I always think it's funny that Mary and Joseph get really nervous that they somehow lost God. Of course, Jesus is just in the temple talking to the other rabbis. It seems that Jesus already knows that he's the Son of God, that he has a special ministry, that he's not just a normal boy. That matters a lot. But the other thing that really mattered is that Jesus has a very different reality coming up. He's deeply thoughtful. He's like a teenager, but he's also like a grown-up. Chapter 19 also talks a lot about John the Baptist. And I invite you to read that and read some parts of Luke chapter 3 to get a little bit more information about Jesus' cousin. But in the meantime, we're going to ask you, what were you like at 12? And would you be okay with us sharing those stories now? All right, Christmas gifts, 12-year-old life. What was it like for you? Follow up with chapters 18 and 19.